We've talked about the Joker before. I think it's a good film. You can check out my Uncapped for more details. But in this video, I want to talk about something else that is related to the Joker film. I want to talk about the moral panic surrounding this film, perpetuated by the mainstream media, which is getting more and more ridiculous as time went on. The claims that the mainstream media made about this film was unbelievably disingenuous, to the point where the people who are involved in the creation of this film are telling the press that they can go screw themselves. But there's a little bit more to the story than that. Before we start out this video, YouTube will probably demonetize it because we're talking about current year America, so if you'd like to support my work, you can do so by checking the links down below. Thanks to the ongoing happenings around America regarding violence perpetrated by mentally sick individuals, people are afraid that the Joker film is going to excuse those bad events by highlighting the journey of one man being driven down to insanity by the society around him. The film is showing his process of deterioration, but some people might take it differently. Some people might take it as a legitimate excuse for them to be violent and resentful to the society at large. The biggest problem that lies with this argument is that sick people are always going to be sick people. As the Joker film illustrated, even though you're doing what you think is right, even though you're just doing your job, there are some individuals out there who are going to take it the wrong way and interpret it as if it was you going against them. These sick individuals are gonna take whatever actions that you do, and if it's going against their interests or antagonizes them in some ways, then you are the enemy in their eyes. The morality of these people are already warped to beyond the levels of any normal human beings. Most people would be unable to comprehend how these people think and how their minds operate. But what we do know is that these people feel that they're being unjustly treated by society at large, and that they wanted some form of retribution through the means of violence and death. This film brings a cautionary tale for everyone, a warning to treat people around you with dignity and respect so that they don't become disillusioned and depressed. My point is, it's a complex problem that cannot be solved by simple solutions. If a film like The Joker is jump-starting the mentality of people being killers, I don't think it's the film that was the issue. I think the issue was those particular individuals in the first place. Our population is growing constantly, so it's no surprise that we're gonna see these troubled individuals popping up to shoot people every year. It's bound to happen, especially with the state of America today. Hounding this film and its creators for presenting the story of a troubled man is not going to solve this issue. But let's get into some of the familiar rhetorics being driven by the critics of this film. You guys might know about how the screening of this film got the US military and FBI and the police to get involved and causing them to warn troops about incel violence. Ah yes, those incels who think that they're being unjustly oppressed by society because they couldn't get a woman for varying different reasons. Those incels who care so much about getting 3D women, but they don't know that 2D women is just better in every single way. I think it's reasonable to assume that people whose primary characteristic is to tell others how they're oppressed by society are generally bitter and resentful. To assume that these people would resort to violence if they're on their breaking point is somewhat reasonable, but these people are not limited to incels. There are many bitter and resentful people out there who will talk about many different types of oppression and revolve their personality on that oppression. They too would be prone to violence if they're on their breaking point. Incels are just one example, and I need to remind people that incel is a mentality, as in their mindset isn't just limited to straight white males. There are non-straight, non-white, and non-males out there who think that they're being unjustly oppressed by society for not getting dates. They too might be prone to release their anger towards society through violent and deadly means. Now, I think everyone here finds themselves being oppressed by the unjust system, but there's a difference between feeling oppressed and having your personality to revolve around complaining about that oppression. If you revolve your personality around that oppression, you're going to feel like you're irrelevant and you don't exist. You're just a stepping stone for the establishment, a means to other people's ends. And the thing is, in a lot of ways, you might be right. Our current system can be unfair and unjust. They can design to oppress us. This is why you might sympathize with the Joker, because you too feel like you're being unfairly treated by the system. I think we all experience that unfair treatment in some ways or the other. The difference is that we have empathy. The difference is that we have the mental capacity to think that committing deadly acts of violence to people is not the solution to the problem. The lunatics will exist regardless, and Thankfully, most normal human beings aren't lunatics. They are, however, emotional, and they all have a breaking point. There are many good reasons for you to think that the establishment is oppressing you in some ways, but none of those reasons justify murder. None of those reasons justify your needs of unleashing violence towards society at large. People can have their breaking points, and it's up to you to make sure that you're not stressed enough to think that you're in that breaking point. And unfortunately, we're living in a time where moral panics and outrage news fuel the spread of information. Some of those outrages are legitimate, while others are there just for the clicks. All I'm trying to say is that there are many factors that make people to get off their breaking points and go nuts. Resentment towards the establishment is one of them, as depicted in the Joker film. Unfortunately, that mindset is pretty much happening to everyone for one reason after another. I too believe that the system is screwing me over. I wouldn't tell you about YouTube demonetizing my channel otherwise, but I too realize that people on YouTube are still people, and they don't deserve to be harmed or murdered. It's a thought that unfortunately couldn't get across to some people's minds. You cannot stop these lunatics by going after fictional entertainment. You cannot use a piece of fiction as a way to tell people that it's the jumpstart of their rampage. There are actual lunatics out there who obsess over entertainment that are pretty much harmless, like cartoons for kids. Just because a lunatic is obsessed over it doesn't mean that everyone shouldn't get to enjoy it. Doesn't mean that the cartoon is automatically bad. The mindset of these lunatics are so warped beyond our comprehension that simply blaming fictional content on their rampage was beyond irresponsible. I want to cite this ridiculous article from Digital Trends a couple of days ago talking about how the Joker is a problem, and it's on all of us. The debate over Joker has polarized public opinion, with one side recommending we take a hard look at the film's themes and the likelihood of it inspiring another shooter, and the other dismissing that recommendation from one of two positions: either a movie can't hold blame for someone's actions, or that holding a film accountable is a slippery slope to the total eradication of creative freedom. One of two? I think they are both correct. You cannot blame a film for someone's actions, and that holding a film accountable is a slippery slope to the total eradication of creative freedom. Again, the minds of these lunatics are so warped that they don't even have to be obsessed with obvious films like Joker to commit their rampage. They can even be obsessed with harmless children's cartoons. They can be obsessed with Kins for all we know. It doesn't matter. The first argument hails from the same basic philosophical camp as blame the person, not the gun, and strips art of its power to move and inspire its audience, while the second suggests that the piles of bodies created by mass shooters are the price we pay for preserving creative freedom. Wow. That's moral panic at its finest. You are very bluntly stating that works of art can incite people to go on rampage and pile more bodies. You're putting people in this monstrously false dilemma of either having more creative freedom or more bodies piling up, implying that somehow the two are related. How authoritarian do you have to be to think that creative freedom is a threat for society because it can incite violence? How would you know that sacrificing creative freedom would prevent more bodies to pile up? Is it because creative freedom means that we can use the medium to empathize with psychopaths? Yes, that's the point of creative freedom in fictional media. You can tell whatever stories you like and empathize with whatever characters you make. Except normal people can tell the difference between fiction and reality. Normal people can tell that depiction does not mean endorsement. Normal people have a sensible moral compass and empathy, one that prevents them from thinking that killing people is okay. A film's job is to tell a story, show a story, reenact a story. Here's a story about a bank robbery. Surely that must mean I endorse it. Fiction doesn't affect everybody the same way they do towards lunatics. Just because fiction might cause a lunatic to shoot people doesn't mean that it might cause the same effect to everybody. Art does have the ability to move and inspire its audience, but it's different from person to person. reason. Some people might be moved towards a piece of art. Some don't. Some people might get obsessed over it. Some don't. Some people might be influenced by it. Some don't. You cannot simply replace the gun with the art in your rhetoric. It's irresponsible, and it only creates more moral panic in your end.
It's no surprise that the defense of Joker has been equated to a defense of artistic freedom, given that the argument offers the best defense for doing nothing.
Because there is nothing that you can do. There is nothing that you should do. This shouldn't have been a conversation. This should be just about a psychological thriller film that people want to go into the theaters and enjoy. But then again, you're one of those people who believe that fiction incites people to cause violence, so you are prone to make these really bad takes. The writer then goes into solutions and how there are no easy ones. I can't blame you for not finding easy solutions in the problem of fiction inciting people to become violent, because that's a non-existent problem that you created and manufactured for this film. The writer would have suggested to delay the film so that it can be released at an appropriate time, but the writer also acknowledged that there probably won't be a time like that. But that suggestion is no match to this incredibly stupid one. Check this out.
The most viable option might be to educate the film's most prominent advocates, Phillips and Phoenix, on the complicated issue the film and its themes present in a world where bitter men turning to mass murder is an all-too-real phenomenon.
Educate them on what, writer? Your messed up moral sensibilities? Your authoritarian rhetoric? Your idea that fiction can incite people to cause harm to others? Your inability to grasp the fact that it's a people problem rather than a fiction problem?
As the ambassadors of such a high-profile film, they have the ability to get the right message out there about the story they're telling in Joker, and would do well to spend more time reinforcing that message instead of walking out of interviews or condemning critics.
So, in other words, you want them to use their film as a way to convey your moral sensibilities. Fortunately, the people working on the film are smart enough to realize that you're talking out of your crack, and their decision to walk out of interviews and condemning critics are the most sensible move that they can make to deal with people like you.
As for the rest of us, a movie like Joker coming to the theaters make us all look at what we're actually willing to sacrifice. If we as a society are silent on Joker or try to rationalize it away for being just a movie, it means we're only in favor of dealing with the causes of mass shootings when they don't directly affect us and don't require any self-sacrifice or self-examination.
That sounds like projection on your part, writer, as if you know the causes of mass shootings and that the answer to the problem of mass shootings is banning fictional content. You're certainly a very fun person if you're willing to sacrifice artistic freedom in favor of your warped sense of morality and false perception of how the real world works. Yes, fictional content generally doesn't affect us the same way that lunatics do. I'm glad that we're in agreement on this. Now, should we do something about the fictional content, or should we do something about the growing masses of bitter and resentful people? Also, I noticed how you never insinuated or said at any point in the article that the problem is the lunatics, because of course not. It's the film that's the problem. It's almost as if you want these bad things to happen so that you can feel justified about your beliefs.
I don't have the answer as to exactly what we should do about a movie like Joker coming out at a time like this.
Of course you don't, because you just created a problem on yourself. To conclude this monstrous crusade towards artistic freedom, I want to emphasize once again that bitter, resentful, and mentally challenged people do exist, and they do have breaking points that would cause them to become violent. These people become that way for various reasons, and fictional entertainment contributed to the least of that. Fictional entertainment may or may not affect them, and even if they do affect them, they may give a positive effect or a negative effect. They might reinforce their harmful beliefs, or they might make them forget about the world for just a couple of minutes. Thankfully, I'm not an individual with some false sense of self-righteousness. I am someone who just wants to have fun.
You won't kill me out of some misplaced sense of self-righteousness. And I won't kill you, because you're just too much fun.
We really live in a society